Hello friends, I have a lot to cover, 5 points in all, so I'll talk fast and read from the screen. Point 1. So Aaron, you were concerned about how the internet makes it easy for people to violate copyright. My opinion on the issue is a little weird and I don't have time to explain it, but perhaps it will suffice to say the internet has not decreased the amount of creative expression in society. Point 2. Robert with more hair, you talked about the creation of echo chambers. This is a big issue, I agree, but you indicated that the mechanism is human choice. You indicated that we put ourselves in echo chambers. This is partially true, but it fails to consider another important factor. Social media platforms place us in echo chambers against our will. I'll link a video that explains how this works. It's a complicated process that I'm not qualified to explain. Put simply, echo chambers are a side effect of selling advertisements. So instead of explaining, I'll tell a story. I follow a number of left-leaning channels on YouTube, not because I consider myself left-leaning, but because they just happen to be the channels that I like. When the Tax Act was passed, I wanted to understand it. I frequently use YouTube as an educational tool for myself. I first watched a few videos that discussed the act from a liberal perspective, but when I searched for conservative videos in order to balance the bias, I couldn't find any. The first 2 pages of results were entirely videos opposed to the Tax Act. Now, if I didn't know that YouTube tailored search results to what they assume are my preferences, I might have simply assumed that the whole country is opposed to the Tax Act and that the government is incompetent and ignores the will of the public. I do know people who think this is good policy, but it's difficult for me to sympathize with them because I inadvertently got caught in an echo chamber. Point 3. The internet has changed how education works, not just by providing educational resources, but also by changing our access to information. It is no longer important to memorize facts. It is more important to learn how to figure out facts, and to build a framework of understanding. I've seen doctors Google medications. The difference between a doctor Googling conditions and medications is, of course, a doctor knows which resources are reliable and which ones are not. They also know about the organ systems that they affect and how to read medical language. Nevertheless, they rely on the internet as a sort of expanded mind. New doctors probably know less facts than older doctors, but they can more quickly access a pool of information too deep for the human mind to absorb. Point 4. So I've been thinking about the suicide rate in the United States recently. Despite our wealth, the suicide rate in the United States is astonishingly high. Most people who know somebody who committed suicide. This is not normal. This didn't used to be true. It's not true in other countries. Why? What caused this? We also have a high rate of diabetes, incidentally, but that doesn't agitate me in the same way because I know why. It's the corn subsidy, it's the fast pace of life, it's the inequality-induced stress, it's the cost of healthcare, it's the sedentary lifestyle. I understand diabetes very well, but I don't understand depression and suicide. I've asked people and they've come up with reasons, but none of them are satisfactory or backed up by research that I know of. If somebody knows better, please tell me. What does this have to do with the internet? I suspect, but cannot prove, that it plays a role in our high suicide rate. My hypothesis is like this. Humans are social animals. Our minds need authentic social contact like our muscles need exercise. Perhaps the motivational center of our brain starts to atrophy without it. The internet provides us with a kind of fake social contact. The communication of ideas is there, but trying to judge another person's perspective of you in real time by reading their face and listening to their tone, that dimension just isn't there. It's like with junk food. It has taste, but it doesn't have the vitamins you need. Internet friendships satisfy the desire to connect, but they lack something important. Plus, you know how a group of friends can sit in a circle, all on their phones, not talking to each other? That's pretty depressing. I've also noticed that my most active Facebook friends are people I know suffer from depression. I don't know if depression causes you to spend more time on Facebook or vice versa, but I have noticed that association. Not that I don't value our conversation on this platform, but I wouldn't rely on it for my social health. Point 5. My final concern is that it could all come crashing down. The internet feels like a very sturdy thing. It's a huge and complicated network, but in reality it's fragile. It can rust, it can break, it can lose power. The internet is physically composed of thin silicon chips and long wires that require a constant supply of electricity to function. The internet is also fragile in all the ways that society is fragile because it's made by society. We've seen a recent infraction in the loss of net neutrality. An EMP, a solar flare, a civil war, an act of terrorism, or a number of other things could bring it crashing down. So that ended on a downer note, but such is life.